Today's video is not going to be very surprising if you've been paying attention. How would I redesign the Druid? Well, if you know me, you know that I like 4th edition, and I think the 4th edition Druid is pretty good. At the risk of saying, just do what 4th edition did, just do what 4th edition did. Like, it's that simple. Really, the surprising part is that it's taken me this far into the list to say that. So let me explain what I mean. 4th edition kind of took the idea of the Druid and separated it out into two different classes. You have the Druid and the Shaman. The Druid is the shapeshifter. It transforms back and forth into beast form and back into normal form. In normal form, it can throw spell-like abilities. In beast form, it does special like beast maneuvers. Gets a lot of more mobility, goes into melee combat, and then it shifts out of beast form to like throw ranged attacks and area effects. Very dynamic gameplay. It's excellent. It is the possibly the best shapeshifter oriented gameplay that I've ever seen in an RPG. I have not seen anything that competes with it. The Shaman then has the more like spiritual aspect of the Druid. It's got healing abilities. It has a spirit companion, sort of an analog to the animal companion that Druids got in 3rd edition. I think that splitting the Druid into two classes, one focused on shapeshifting and one focused on spellcasting, is the best way to do it. And here's why. The Druid in 5th edition has an identity problem. If you're playing the Sabrock's Opinion drinking game, identity problem, take your shot. So the 5th edition Druid is really a Druid. It's two classes. It's trying to be two different things is what it is. You're a full caster, and you're like a nature-themed caster. So you summon animals, you talk to plants, that kind of thing. You know, plant growth, entangle. Curiously, I don't think they get web. For some reason, web is not considered part of nature. I don't know. That's weird to me. And there's no spider-themed Druid. I don't think Druids have any way to get web through class abilities. I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong on that. I don't think so. Anyways, but they're a nature-based spellcaster, a full caster. So you would think that you are encouraged to spend most of your time casting spells, like a full caster. When in fact, you also have an ability called Wild Shape, which takes up a considerable amount of your class's design space. There's a lot of stuff that references Wild Shape. Use a Wild Shape charge to do this. While you're Wild Shaped, you can do this. There's a whole subclass dedicated to Wild Shape to give you like combat forms, which I've heard the argument that it should be baseline. I don't think I necessarily agree with that. I think that making the Druid be like because like when a Moon Druid is basically already better than any of the martial classes in a number of ways, and making a class do that and be a full caster at the same time seems like it'd be a bit much. But that's a whole other argument to get into. So basically, you have like the Wild Shape and the spellcasting are two different identities for this class, and they don't work together. They explicitly do not work together. You cannot cast spells while in Wild Shape. And it takes a whole action to get into or out of Wild Shape. Actually, I think dropping out of Wild Shape might be a bonus action even for a normal Druid. Maybe. It takes a whole action to get into Wild Shape. So, like, you can't even quickly, unless you're a Moon Druid, you cannot quickly, like, cast a spell and then Wild Shape and get into melee. You know, you can't do both of those things. Should you be able to? Maybe, maybe not. That's kind of a whole separate issue that I don't really want to get into. There's a lot of issues about the Druid that I don't want to get into. Weird for someone making a video about the Druid. Anyways, how I would redesign the Druid. I would split it into two classes like 4th edition did. Now, I think that the Druid, the 4th edition Druid, while its gameplay is excellent, and I can't stress that enough, I think for the purposes of trying to do a 5th edition version, I wouldn't give it spellcasting. It would have access to certain specific spells because the druid is a naturally magical type of character archetype. But it wouldn't have like spell slots per day. It wouldn't have spellcasting progression. It would just have access to certain specific spells that it could cast a certain number of times a day, usually one. And then what it would have, instead of a generic, you are in beast form, and now you can do anything that beast form does. Instead of that, I would have a number of different beast forms, each with a different specialty. So you have your flight beast form, you have your high mobility beast form, you have your tanking beast form, you have, like different beast forms that get different passive abilities and like modifications to the way that your gameplay is. Like, bear form would be your tanking form. You turn into a bear, and now you have resistance to physical damage. Ooh, that's pretty cool. Maybe you also increase to large size and you have reach now. So you can control a larger area and you become a defender. You become an actual tank just by being in bear form. And then you could have, a boar form. You turn into a boar, and now you have a charge maneuver that you can just use whenever you want. You move your full speed in a straight line towards someone and do like double damage or whatever. Those kinds of things, work out the specifics. But you would have several different beast forms to choose from, and you get to learn a certain number of them, kind of like learning cantrips. And then on top of that, so this, much like the Bard, I had some of these ideas. I actually did write some of these down. I started making a druid class and I kind of gave up on it because it was getting kind of complicated, to be honest, to fix a problem that doesn't exist. Because honestly, the druid is fine, I guess. Like power-wise, the druid is fine in 5th edition. And I don't think people would necessarily appreciate what I'm doing with the druid unless I also did the shaman. I don't really have an interest in doing the shaman because I don't like making casters. I just don't like making caster classes. So, in addition to having your base forms, I also had a mechanic for like a burst mechanic where a certain number of times per short rest, when you assume your beast form, you can choose to like become like a dire version of that beast form. And so every beast form would have like a dire entry, and it says like, if you are going into the dire form, you get like this additional benefit for as long as you stay in that form. Or it's like an additional action that you get to do right away as soon as you adopt this form. Those kinds of things. So that is a limited resource that you use when you adopt a new beast form, and you get additional benefits for that. In addition, there would be a relatively small, like this is not going to be a massive list of abilities, like a spell list, but a relatively small list of special maneuvers that require certain forms. And so you could learn maneuvers from that. So you have your 3 different layers, and you'll notice this a lot. I like multi-layered class design, very much like the Warlock, which I consider to be the best design class in the player's handbook. The Warlock has several layers of character construction, even if you are not multi-classing. You've got, what type of pact do you have? What kind of patron do you have? Which invocations do you pick? These things all layer together to create your build. I like doing that. I did that with the Bard. I didn't do it with the Barbarian, just because I didn't have the inspiration to do so. But with the Druid, I think I would do something like similar. So you have your different forms. You have a resource that allows you to enter a burst form, and you can sort of specialize and spec out for specific beast forms burst abilities. And then you have like maneuvers that you can use with certain beast forms. And each beast form, I want to say that I had like a basic attack version, a basic attack for every beast form, and they all scaled at cantrip scaling, because it's kind of arbitrary, to be honest, the rate at which cantrips scale. They increase base value by in, which is your levels 1 through 4, you are doing in damage. You get plus in damage at levels 5, 11, and 17. That's standard cantrip scaling. It's arbitrary that it happens at those levels, but it's it is what it is. You might as well scale at that level. That's what 5e is sort of established as the norm. So that's what all of my classes do. They scale at those levels. Except for the barbarian, who scales very differently. Man, I can't remember how the scaling on that works. I know that they don't get, like, they only get extra attack at 5th level, but the idea with that is that you shouldn't be doing extra attack most of the time. You should be using your rage powers and getting bigger and stronger maneuvers that way. So that's kind of an exception. If you are intending, if you're supposed to be doing this at-will stuff a lot, such as with the Artificer is going to be doing that. You've got, and this Druid would be doing that a lot. You're like most of your attacks are going to be at-will attacks, just basic attacks. So have them scale at those levels, 5, 11, and 17. So your basic attacks do that, and then like your special maneuvers may modify your basic attacks from there. So like your flight maneuver or your flight form would be a relatively small bird, unless you burst and then it becomes a big bird, and now you're, you know, some like, you know, Thunderbird Phoenix type thing. Probably not a phoenix. I think that's a little too magical. But anyways, and the way that I had written out, the forms are not a specific animal. They are named after the job they are meant to do. So you have like guardian form, predator form, flight form, those kinds of things. It feels a little less like prescribed flavor, but in return, players are allowed to decide what those forms look like for their character. You want to turn into an owlbear? Sure. What does the owlbear look like to you? Is that a predator or is that a guardian? You know, you get to decide. And so it doesn't have to be a real beast. It doesn't have, like, you aren't limited in form. So by trying to like separate flavor from mechanics, my intent is to open up creative opportunities for the players. I don't tell the players what their forms look like. The players get to decide that. So that's the basic kind of structure for the Druid, the basic direction that I would take the Druid in. And as an aside, like simultaneous with that, because you do want a nature spellcaster, I'd have the Shaman. And I think that the Spirit Companion of the 4th edition Shaman is actually an excellent mechanic. I really like the way that worked. And so I'd probably just port that straight forward, like almost 1-to-1 the Shaman into 5th edition. You have a Spirit Companion that moves around, and it can range like up to 100 feet away from you. And then when you use abilities, you can target things within range of you or things within range of your Spirit Companion. When you heal, you can heal somebody within range, and then bonus healing is someone within range of your Spirit Companion. You get like additional healing. So you're always wanting to heal 2 targets for maximum efficiency. And then the other thing is that like the Spirit Companion can be hit. Like it's a creature that can be, or I think it's technically wasn't even a creature. It was a conjuration. But you could attack it. It could take damage and be destroyed. And it didn't have very many hit points. It was very easy to destroy. But it would do like, I want to say it had like 10 plus half your level, or like 10 plus your level in hit points. And then when it dies, it does 5 plus half your level damage to the Shaman. So you do take some damage. It doesn't completely negate that damage. But it's always less damage than it took to destroy the spirit. And on your next turn, as a minor action / bonus action, depending on how you want to do it, you just summon it again. Like there's no penalty. You don't have to like wait for the end of a rest, because so much of your class is based on this Spirit Command. You are a pet class, you know, in the same way that the Hunter in WoW is a pet class, the same way that like a Beastmaster Ranger is a pet class. So much of your class is based on having the Spirit Companion out, getting benefits from it, retargeting from it, you know, based on its positioning, that without it, you kind of suck. So it's important to be able to get it back quickly. So I would lean into that a lot and have a Shaman who is a nature. It's basically the Druid minus the wild shape, except with less of a focus on like control and summoning, and more focus on helping allies, healing, creating defensive situations. because I think that there's too much control in 5th edition, so I probably wouldn't design a class that does it well. I don't think it's that interesting. But that's what I would do. I would split the Druid into 2 classes, one that is casting and one that is wild shape. And let them both do that. Like, just really focus on doing that. That's what I would do. And that is more or less just translating what 4th edition did into 5th edition terms.